Sam Rivers wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel beneath Gamma 7 mining station. His toolbox scraped against the metal walls with each movement forward. The power coupling in Section 12 had failed again, and as the only qualified electrician on this remote outpost, fixing it fell to him. The mining station floated silently in the asteroid belt, far from any major trade routes. Most people avoided assignments here, but Sam preferred the quiet. After 15 years in the military, dealing with combat zones and emergency repairs under enemy fire, the peaceful routine of maintaining a small mining operation suited him perfectly. No more explosions, no more watching friends die, just him and the steady hum of electrical systems. He reached the damaged coupling and pulled out his scanner. The readings made him frown. The power drain was coming from somewhere else entirely, not from the coupling itself. Following the energy signature, Sam traced the problem to an external breach in the station's hull. Someone would need to go outside to fix it. Sam suited up in his repair gear and cycled through the airlock. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before him, filled with floating rocks and debris. He activated his magnetic boots and began walking along the station's outer hull toward the breach location. The damage was worse than the internal scans had shown. Something had torn through the outer plating, creating a hole large enough for him to climb through. As he approached the breach, Sam heard something that made him stop in his tracks. A soft whimpering sound was coming from inside the damaged section. That was impossible. Nothing could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. Yet the sound continued, weak but definitely there. Sam activated his helmet lights and peered through the hole. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Two small creatures lay huddled together in what appeared to be the remains of some kind of escape pod. They looked like tiny dragons from ancient Earth stories, with scaled skin that shimmered even in the harsh light of his helmet lamps. One was deep red with gold markings, the other silver with blue patterns along its wings. Both creatures were injured. The red one had a deep gash along its side, while the silver one's left wing hung at an odd angle. They were breathing, somehow surviving in an environment that should have killed them instantly. Sam's military training kicked in immediately. Wounded meant priorities. Assess, stabilize, evacuate. He squeezed through the breach and knelt beside the creatures. Up close, he could see they were very young, probably babies. Their scales were soft and their eyes held an intelligence that reminded him of human children. The red one looked up at him and made a sound that was part purr, part whimper. It was clearly asking for help. Sam had no idea what these beings were or where they had come from, but he knew he could not leave them to die. He carefully examined their injuries, using the basic medical training all soldiers received. The wounds were serious but not immediately fatal. The creatures seemed to understand he was trying to help, staying still as he worked. Getting them back to the station proved challenging. Sam had to make multiple trips, carrying one creature at a time through the breach and along the hull to the nearest airlock. The creatures were heavier than they looked, and their scales felt warm to the touch even through his gloves. By the time he got both of them into the station, his air supply was running low. Sam brought the injured creatures to his private quarters, the only place on the station where he could treat them without immediate questions from the other crew members. Gamma 7 had only 12 people stationed there, and news traveled fast in such a small community. He needed time to figure out what these creatures were before involving anyone else. His quarters were small but functional, with a bed, desk, and basic medical supplies from his military days. Sam laid the creatures on his bed and began treating their wounds with antiseptic and bandages. The red one watched his every movement with bright golden eyes, while the silver one had fallen unconscious from pain and exhaustion. As Sam worked, he noticed something unusual about the creatures. Their bodies seemed to generate a small electrical field. His old military implants, devices that enhanced his nervous system for better reaction times, picked up the bioelectric signals. It was like they were trying to communicate with him through electrical pulses. The first few hours were critical. Sam stayed awake monitoring their condition, checking their breathing and making sure their wounds were not getting infected. He rigged up a heating element to keep them warm and used his food rations to try feeding them. They seemed to prefer the high-protein emergency bars over anything else. By the second day, both creatures were showing signs of improvement. The red one, which Sam started calling Ember because of its coloring, was more active and curious about its surroundings. The silver one, which he named Ash, was still weak but no longer unconscious. Both seemed to recognize Sam as their rescuer and caretaker, The biggest challenge was keeping their presence secret from the rest of the crew. Sam told his supervisor that he was fighting a bad case of space flu and needed to stay in his quarters for a few days. This bought him time to care for the creatures while he figured out what to do next. On the third day, something remarkable happened. Ember managed to stand up and take a few shaky steps around the room. The creature made soft chirping sounds and rubbed against Sam's leg like a cat. Ash was still recovering but watched everything with alert eyes that missed nothing. Sam realized these were not just animals. The way they looked at him, the way they seemed to understand his words even if they could not respond in kind, told him these creatures were intelligent beings, possibly more intelligent than humans despite their apparent youth. As he sat in his quarters that night watching the two creatures sleep peacefully on his bed, Sam wondered what he had gotten himself into. These beings had to have come from somewhere, and someone was probably looking for them. But until he knew more about the situation, his priority was simple: keep them safe and help them recover from their injuries. Outside his window, the stars continued their eternal dance through space, holding secrets that Sam was only beginning to discover. 5 days had passed since Sam discovered the creatures, and his small quarters had transformed into an improvised nursery. Ember and Ash were recovering well, though their presence was becoming harder to hide from the rest of the crew. Sam had used up most of his sick leave excuse, and people were starting to ask questions about his continued absence from regular duties. The creatures had grown noticeably larger in just these few days, and their intelligence was becoming more apparent with each passing hour. Ember had figured out how to operate the door controls by watching Sam, though fortunately the creature seemed to understand it should not leave the room. Ash was more cautious but equally observant, often studying the various electronic devices in Sam's quarters with intense focus. Both creatures had developed a strong attachment to Sam. Whenever he left the room, even briefly, they would wait by the door until he returned. Ember would make soft trilling sounds when Sam came back, while Ash would gently touch his hand with one clawed finger. It reminded Sam of the way his childhood dog used to greet him after school. The electrical communication Sam had first noticed was becoming clearer. His military implants picked up distinct patterns in the bioelectric fields the creatures generated. Happy emotions created warm, steady pulses. Fear or pain generated sharp, irregular bursts. When the creatures wanted something, they projected focused beams of electrical energy that Sam could feel as gentle tingles against his enhanced nervous system. Sam began to experiment with the communication method. He discovered that by concentrating and using his implants, he could generate crude electrical signals in response. The creatures were delighted when they realized he was trying to talk to them in their own language. Their excitement generated such strong electrical fields that the lights in his quarters flickered. Through this basic electrical conversation, Sam learned that the creatures understood much more than he had initially thought. They knew they were not on their homeworld. They understood that Sam had saved them from death. Most importantly, they seemed to grasp that their presence needed to remain secret for now. The food situation was becoming complicated. The creatures had enormous appetites and were quickly consuming Sam's personal food supplies. They particularly loved the emergency protein bars, but also showed interest in any metal objects Sam brought them. He watched in amazement as Ember chewed on a spare copper wire like it was candy, apparently extracting nutrients from the metal itself. Sam realized he needed help, but he also knew the risks. First contact protocols existed for situations like this, but they involved immediately reporting any alien life forms to Station Command. From there, the information would go up the chain to colonial authorities and eventually to Earth government. The creatures would become subjects for study, probably separated from him permanently. Looking at Ember and Ash as they played together on his bed, chasing each other in circles and making happy chirping sounds, Sam could not bring himself to turn them over to bureaucrats who might not understand their intelligence or emotional needs. These were not specimens to be studied. They were children who had been hurt and were now healing under his care. His decision was made for him on the 6th day. Sam was returning to his quarters after a quick trip to get more food supplies when he heard shouting from inside his room. He rushed through the door to find Ash backed into a corner, wings spread defensively, while Ember stood between the silver creature and Station Security Chief Rodriguez. Rodriguez had his weapon drawn, but had not fired. He was staring at the creatures with a mixture of fear and amazement. When Sam entered, the security chief turned to him with an expression of complete confusion. "Rivers, what in the hell are these things? I came to check on you because you missed your shift change report, and I find aliens in your quarters. Do you realize what kind of violation this represents?" Before Sam could answer, Ember moved. The red creature stepped forward and began generating a complex pattern of electrical pulses. Sam felt the communication through his implants, but Rodriguez clearly felt something too. The security chief lowered his weapon slightly, looking puzzled. "What is it doing? I feel like something is touching my brain." "They are trying to communicate," Sam said carefully. "Chief, these are not dangerous animals. They are intelligent beings, probably children, and they were badly injured when I found them. I could not just let them die." Ash had stopped cowering and was now studying Rodriguez with curious eyes. The silver creature began generating its own electrical patterns, softer and more welcoming than Ember's protective signals. Sam realized the creatures were trying to show the security chief that they meant no harm. Rodriguez holstered his weapon completely. "I have never felt anything like that before. It is like they are talking directly to my nervous system." "How is that possible?" Sam explained about his military implants and how they allowed him to interpret the creature's bioelectric communication. He described finding them near death in the breached section of the station and his decision to nurse them back to health. As he spoke, both creatures moved closer to Rodriguez, still projecting calm, friendly electrical patterns. "This is way above my security clearance, Rivers. I need to report this to Commander Walsh immediately. We are talking about first contact with an alien species. There are protocols that must be followed." Ember suddenly moved between Rodriguez and the door, not aggressively but clearly blocking his path. The creature looked up at the security chief and began projecting what Sam recognized as a pleading pattern. Through his implants, he could feel the emotional content of the communication. The creature was asking Rodriguez not to separate them from Sam. Rodriguez stood frozen, obviously feeling the emotional appeal even without implants to translate it. "They do not want to be separated from you. I can feel that much even without your enhanced nervous system." Ash joined Ember by the door and both creatures began projecting synchronized patterns. The electrical field they generated was so strong that the room's electronic systems began responding. Sam's computer screen flickered with patterns that matched the creature's electrical output. His radio crackled with static that seemed almost like music. "Chief," Sam said quietly, "these beings trust me. They are far from home, probably lost, and I am the only familiar thing in their world right now. If we follow standard protocols, they will be taken away for study and testing. They will be alone and scared." Rodriguez looked down at the two creatures who were now sitting beside each other, still projecting their emotional appeals. The security chief was a career military man like Sam, someone who understood duty and following orders. But he was also human enough to recognize the plea of frightened children, regardless of their species. After a long moment, Rodriguez made his decision. "I never saw anything unusual during my security check. You are recovering from space flu and will return to duty when you feel better. But Rivers, you cannot keep them hidden forever. Eventually someone else will find out, and when that happens, I cannot protect you from the consequences." The relief Sam felt was echoed by the creatures, whose electrical patterns shifted to warm, grateful pulses. Ember approached Rodriguez and gently touched the security chief's hand with one small claw. The contact created a visible spark of electricity, but Rodriguez did not pull away. "Take care of them, Rivers. Whatever they are, wherever they came from, they chose you as their protector. That means something." After Rodriguez left, Sam sat on his bed with Ember and Ash curled up beside him. He knew the security chief was right. This situation could not continue indefinitely. Soon, he would need to make decisions about the creature's future that would affect not just them, but possibly the relationship between their species and humanity. But for now, he was content to simply be their guardian and friend, watching them sleep peacefully beside him while the stars continued their endless journey through the void outside his window. 2 weeks after Rodriguez discovered the creatures in Sam's quarters, reports began flooding in from across human space. Ships had been detected on the edges of every major star system. Vessels unlike anything in human records. They were massive, elegant constructions that seemed to be made of living metal, with designs that suggested both advanced technology and ancient artistry. Commander Walsh called an emergency briefing for all senior staff. Sam attended as the station's chief maintenance officer, though his real focus was on the two creatures he had left sleeping in his quarters. Ember and Ash had grown considerably in the past weeks, now roughly the size of large dogs, and their intelligence continued to develop at an alarming rate. Intelligence reports indicate these ships belong to something called the Draconic Empire, Walsh announced to the gathered staff. Until 2 weeks ago, we had only fragmentary references to such a civilization from archaeological sites and ancient ruins. Now it appears they are very real, very advanced, and very active. The holographic display showed images captured by long-range sensors. The ships were beautiful in a way that made human vessels look crude by comparison. Their hulls curved and flowed like the bodies of great flying creatures, and energy readings suggested technology centuries ahead of human capabilities. "What do they want?" asked Dr. Kim, the station's medical officer. "That is the problem," Walsh replied grimly. "They have not responded to any communication attempts. Every time our ships try to approach for peaceful contact, the vessels simply vanish only to reappear elsewhere. The pattern suggests they are searching for something, but we have no idea what." Sam felt a chill run down his spine. He thought about the escape pod wreckage where he had found Ember and Ash, and the fact that both creatures were clearly not native to anywhere in human space. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. "Are they hostile?" Rodriguez asked. "Unknown. They have not attacked anyone, but they have also not acknowledged our existence. Colonial Command is treating this as a potential first contact situation, but they are also preparing for the possibility of invasion." The briefing continued with discussions of emergency protocols and defensive measures, but Sam barely heard any of it. His mind was racing with the implications of what he was learning. If these ships belonged to the same species as Ember and Ash, then the creatures in his quarters were not just lost alien children. They might be the reason for this entire crisis. After the briefing, Sam hurried back to his quarters. He found Ember and Ash awake and agitated, their electrical patterns chaotic and distressed. The moment he entered the room, both creatures rushed to him, projecting urgent communication attempts through their bioelectric fields. Through his implants, Sam felt their emotional state clearly. They were frightened and homesick, but there was something else. A sense of recognition and hope that had not been there before. They knew about the ships. Sam sat down on his bed and let the creatures climb into his lap. At their current size, this was becoming increasingly difficult, but they still sought the comfort of physical contact with their human protector. He concentrated on his implants, trying to project calm, questioning electrical patterns. The response he received was unlike anything they had communicated before. Complex layered information flowed through the electrical connection. Images formed in Sam's mind of vast cities built into the sides of mountains, populated by creatures similar to Ember and Ash, but much larger and more mature. He saw beings that looked like the dragons of human mythology, but clearly intelligent and civilized. More images followed. A great palace that seemed to be carved from a single enormous crystal, hundreds of dragon-like beings bowing before a massive figure, whose presence radiated power and authority. Family gatherings where creatures like Ember and Ash played together under the watchful eyes of their elders. Then came darker images. Fear, confusion, and pain. The memory of being separated from everything familiar and safe. The terror of being lost in the vast emptiness of space. Sam realized he was seeing their memories of whatever had happened before he found them. The final image made Sam's blood run cold. The massive figure from the palace, the one who commanded such obvious respect and authority, was searching. The emotional content of the memory suggested desperate urgency, the kind of determination that would stop at nothing to achieve its goal. Sam understood now. Ember and Ash were not just random alien children. They were someone important, and that someone was looking for them with the resources of an entire interstellar empire. The ships appearing throughout human space were search vessels, and they would not stop until they found what they were looking for. The question was, what would happen when they did? Would this powerful figure be grateful to the humans who had cared for his missing children? Or would he see humanity as kidnappers who had taken what belonged to him? Over the next several days, the situation in human space continued to escalate. More ships appeared, and their search pattern became increasingly aggressive. They were scanning every space station, every planet, every asteroid mining operation. Whatever they were looking for, they were determined to find it. Colonial Command issued new orders. All stations were to report any unusual findings immediately. Any evidence of alien technology or life forms was to be secured, and prepared for immediate transfer to military authorities. Sam knew it was only a matter of time before someone made the connection between the appearance of the dragon ships and the creatures in his quarters. The decision was made for him on the third day. Long-range sensors detected a massive vessel approaching Gamma 7's location. Unlike the other ships that had been spotted throughout human space, this one was not trying to remain hidden. It was coming directly toward the mining station, and its energy readings were off the charts. Commander Walsh called another emergency meeting. "We have a situation. One of those dragon ships is heading straight for us. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. I want all non-essential personnel evacuated to the emergency shuttles immediately." "What about the mining operation?" asked the station's operations manager. "The mining operation does not matter if we are all dead. This ship is 20 times larger than anything we have ever seen. If it wants to destroy us, our weapons would be like throwing rocks at a battleship." As the meeting broke up and crew members rushed to prepare for evacuation, Sam remained in his chair. He knew why the ship was coming. Somehow they had traced Ember and Ash to this location. The question now was what he should do about it. He could follow evacuation protocols and take the creatures with him to one of the escape shuttles. But if these beings could track them to Gamma 7, they could certainly track them to wherever the shuttles went. Running would only delay the inevitable confrontation. He could reveal the creature's presence to Commander Walsh and let military protocol take over. But that would likely result in Ember and Ash being treated as strategic assets, rather than the frightened children they actually were. Or he could stay and face whatever was coming, trusting that his care for the creatures would count for something when their people arrived to reclaim them. Sam made his choice. He would not run, and he would not let bureaucrats and soldiers make decisions about beings who had become like family to him. When the dragon ship arrived, he would be waiting with Ember and Ash, ready to face whatever consequences came from his decision to save 2 lost children among the stars. In his quarters, the creatures seemed to sense his resolve. Their electrical patterns shifted to match his determination, and for the first time since the ships had appeared, they seemed truly calm. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The dragon ship arrived exactly when predicted, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with a flash that lit up the entire asteroid field. Sam watched through his quarters viewport as the massive vessel materialized in space near Gamma 7. It was even more magnificent than the sensor readings had suggested, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from nose to tail and shaped like an enormous flying creature with wings spread wide. Most of the station's crew had evacuated hours earlier, leaving only a skeleton team of volunteers. Commander Walsh had ordered Sam to leave with the others, but Sam had refused. He claimed someone needed to stay and maintain critical systems during the evacuation. The real reason was sleeping peacefully in his quarters, where Ember and Ash seemed strangely calm despite the arrival of their people. "All remaining personnel, this is Commander Walsh. The alien vessel is requesting permission to dock. I repeat, they are requesting permission to dock. They have not made any hostile moves, and they appear to be following standard approach protocols." Sam felt relief wash over him. If the dragons were following diplomatic procedures, it suggested they came in peace rather than conquest. Through the station's communication system, he heard the first contact between the 2 species taking place. The dragon voice that came through the speakers was deep and resonant, speaking perfect English with only a slight accent that made each word sound like music. "Greetings, humans of the vessel. Gamma 7, I am High Chancellor Marcus of the Imperial Fleet. We seek audience with your leadership regarding a matter of great importance to our people." Commander Walsh responded with obvious nervousness. "This is Commander Walsh, acting station commander. We welcome peaceful contact with your people, Chancellor Marcus. However, I must inform you that this is a civilian mining operation with limited diplomatic authority. Commander Walsh, we understand your limitations. We seek not formal negotiations but information regarding 2 of our people who may have found refuge aboard your station. We have traced their life signs to this location." Sam's heart began pounding. The moment he had been dreading was finally here. He looked at Ember and Ash, who were now awake and watching him with their intelligent golden and silver eyes. Both creatures were projecting calm, reassuring electrical patterns, as if they were trying to comfort him rather than the other way around. "I am afraid I do not understand, Chancellor. We have had no contact with your people before today." There was a pause before Marcus responded. And when he did, his voice carried a note of steel beneath the diplomatic courtesy. "Commander, our sensors clearly indicate the presence of Imperial blood aboard your station. We will be sending a delegation to investigate. We trust you will cooperate fully with our search." Sam knew he could not let Commander Walsh and the remaining crew face this situation without knowing the truth. He activated his personal communicator and contacted the command center. "Commander Walsh, this is Sam Rivers. I need to speak with you immediately. I have information relevant to the Dragon's request." "Rivers, what are you talking about? You should have evacuated with the others." "Sir, I am the one they are looking for. I have been caring for 2 young members of their species for the past 3 weeks. I found them injured in the asteroid field and nursed them back to health." The silence that followed was deafening. Sam could imagine the expressions of shock and disbelief on the command center. When Walsh finally responded, his voice was strained with barely controlled anger. "Rivers, are you telling me you have been harboring alien life forms for 3 weeks without reporting it? Do you have any idea what kind of situation you have created?" Before Sam could answer, Chancellor Marcus's voice cut through the communication channel. "Human Sam Rivers, this is most interesting news. We would be very pleased to meet with you and confirm the welfare of our young ones." "How did you hear our conversation?" Walsh demanded. "Your communication systems are primitive but adequate. We have been monitoring all transmissions since our arrival. Sam Rivers, will you agree to meet with our delegation?" Sam looked at Ember and Ash one more time. Both creatures were projecting encouragement through their electrical fields, giving him the strength he needed for what came next. "Yes, Chancellor Marcus, I will meet with your delegation. But I want your word that no harm will come to anyone else on this station. This was my decision alone." "You have our word, Sam Rivers. No human will be harmed. We come seeking our missing family, not to make war." 30 minutes later, Sam stood in Gamma 7's main docking bay, with Ember and Ash beside him. The creatures had grown restless as the dragon ship approached, their electrical patterns shifting to excitement and anticipation. They knew they were about to be reunited with their own kind. Commander Walsh and Security Chief Rodriguez flanked Sam, both men visibly nervous but determined to support their colleague. The remaining crew members watched from behind protective barriers, weapons ready but not drawn. The docking bay's atmosphere shields shimmered as a transport vessel from the dragon ship passed through them. The craft was small but elegant, its design flowing and organic like all dragon technology. It settled onto the deck with barely a whisper of sound. A ramp extended from the transport and 5 figures emerged. Sam's breath caught in his throat as he got his first look at adult members of the dragon species. They were magnificent beings standing nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that reflected light like polished metal. Their faces combined reptilian features with an unmistakable intelligence that reminded Sam of the expressions he had grown to love on Ember and Ash. The leader of the delegation was obviously the one who had identified himself as Chancellor Marcus. His scales were deep blue with silver markings, and he carried himself with the authority of someone accustomed to command. But when his eyes found Ember and Ash, his formal bearing cracked slightly. The 2 young creatures broke away from Sam and rushed toward the delegation, their electrical patterns blazing with joy and recognition. The adult dragons responded with their own bioelectric displays, and Sam felt the emotional reunion even through his limited implants. These were not random members of the species. These were family. Chancellor Marcus knelt down as Ember and Ash reached him, and Sam watched as the formal diplomat transformed into a loving grandfather. The Chancellor gathered both young ones into his arms, his own electrical patterns shifting to warm, protective pulses that made everyone in the docking bay feel suddenly calmer. After a long moment, Marcus looked up at Sam with eyes that held depths of emotion the human could barely comprehend. When he spoke, his voice was thick with feeling. "Sam Rivers of the humans, you have returned to us that which we had given up for lost. The debt we owe you cannot be calculated by any standard our people know." Sam stepped forward, acutely aware that his next words might determine the future relationship between their species. "Chancellor Marcus, they were hurt and alone when I found them. I could not do anything else but help them. Any decent person would have done the same." Marcus rose to his full height, still keeping one hand on each of the young creatures. "Sam Rivers, you speak of decency as if it were common, but our experience tells us otherwise. We have traveled among the stars for thousands of your years, and we have learned that compassion across species lines is the rarest of qualities." The Chancellor's expression grew serious as he continued. "There is something you must know about these young ones you have protected. They are not merely citizens of our empire. They are Ember and Ash, grandchildren of Emperor Draken the Eternal, direct heirs to the Crystal Throne. You have been caring for the future rulers of our civilization. The docking bay fell silent as the implications of this revelation sank in. Sam felt his legs go weak and he had to steady himself against a nearby support beam. He had known the creatures were intelligent and probably important, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Your Highnesses, Marcus continued, addressing Ember and Ash directly, your grandfather has mobilized every ship in the Imperial fleet to search for you. Will you consent to return home so that his fears may be put to rest? The response came not in words but in electrical patterns that every person in the docking bay could feel. The young dragon's bioelectric fields carried messages of love and gratitude directed at Sam, mixed with excitement about returning home. But underlying it all was a clear emotional statement that seemed to say they would never forget the human who had saved them. Sam Rivers, Marcus said formally, by order of Emperor Draken the Eternal, you are commanded to appear before the Crystal Throne so that the Empire may properly acknowledge the debt we owe you. Will you accept this invitation? Sam looked at Ember and Ash, who were projecting hopeful, encouraging patterns. He thought about his quiet life as a maintenance worker, and how it was about to change forever. But when he saw the trust and affection in the young creature's eyes, his answer was never really in doubt. I accept, Chancellor Marcus, but I want assurance that my people here will be safe. You have more than assurance, Sam Rivers. You have the gratitude of the Empire, and that protection extends to all who have shown you kindness. As the delegation prepared to depart with their rescued royalty, Sam realized that his simple act of compassion had just altered the course of galactic history. The dragons had found humanity, and somehow, Sam had become the bridge between their civilizations. The journey to the dragon homeworld took 3 days aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal, Dawn. Sam had expected to be treated as a prisoner or at best a curiosity, but instead found himself honored as a guest of the highest rank. Chancellor Marcus had assigned him quarters that were larger and more luxurious than his entire home back on Gamma 7. Ember and Ash had refused to be separated from Sam during the journey, despite the obvious desire of their caretakers to examine them for injuries and check their health. The young dragon stayed in Sam's quarters, sleeping curled up beside his bed just as they had done on the mining station. Their electrical patterns remained calm and content as long as Sam was nearby. Through the vast windows of his quarters, Sam watched as they approached the dragon homeworld. The planet was unlike anything in human space, with cities that seemed to grow from the mountains themselves and crystal spires that caught and reflected the light of 3 different suns. The entire world sparkled like a jewel against the darkness of space. It is beautiful, is it not? Chancellor Marcus had entered the quarters quietly, moving with the fluid grace all dragons seemed to possess. The capital city has stood for over 10,000 of your years, and yet it grows more magnificent with each passing generation. Sam nodded, still amazed by what he was seeing. I never imagined anything like this could exist. Your people have built something incredible here. Our people have had much time to build, Sam Rivers, but time alone does not create beauty. That requires wisdom, patience, and the kind of caring spirit that led you to rescue 2 lost children in the darkness of space. As they spoke, Ember and Ash stirred from their nap and approached the window. Both young dragons pressed their faces against the transparent surface, their electrical patterns blazing with excitement at seeing their home again. Sam felt their joy through his implants, a warm feeling that made him smile despite his nervousness about the upcoming meeting with their grandfather. They have missed this place, Marcus observed. Royal children are rarely allowed to travel beyond our borders and never without heavy escort. We still do not know how they came to be lost in human space. Sam had been wondering about that himself. Through their electrical communication, he had learned that Ember and Ash remembered being on a ship with other dragons, then pain and confusion, then waking up alone in the wreckage where he found them. But the details remained unclear. Chancellor, what will happen when we meet the Emperor? I am just a maintenance worker who happened to be in the right place at the right time. I do not know anything about royal protocols or diplomatic procedures. Marcus turned from the window to study Sam with those ancient, intelligent eyes that all mature dragons possessed. Sam Rivers, you worry about things that do not matter. Emperor Draken is first and foremost a grandfather who thought his beloved grandchildren were dead. The fact that you saved them makes you the most important person in the Empire right now. regardless of your background or knowledge of court customs. The flagship entered the planet's atmosphere with barely a tremor, its advanced technology making the descent feel like floating on air. Sam watched as they approached the capital city, passing over crystal towers that rose thousands of meters into the sky, and bridges that spanned impossible distances without visible support. The palace itself was carved from a single mountain, its walls made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow with internal light. Dragons flew through the air around the structure, their wings catching the light as they went about their daily business. It was like stepping into a fantasy story made real. The ship landed on a platform that jutted out from the mountainside, offering a view that stretched to the horizon in all directions. As Sam prepared to disembark, Chancellor Marcus placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "A word of advice, human friend. Our Emperor has lived for over 3,000 years and has seen much in that time. He can be intimidating to those who do not know him. But remember that today you are not meeting the ruler of an interstellar empire. You are meeting a grandfather who owes you a debt that can never be repaid." The throne room was vast beyond imagination, its crystal walls rising so high that the ceiling was lost in shadows above. Dragons of all sizes and colors filled the space, their scales reflecting the light from enormous chandeliers that floated in mid-air without any visible means of support. The whispered conversations of hundreds of beings created a susurrus of sound that echoed off the crystal walls. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from what appeared to be a single enormous diamond, sat Emperor Dracon the Eternal. He was the largest dragon Sam had ever seen, easily twice the size of Chancellor Marcus, with scales that shifted between gold and silver as he moved. Even sitting motionless on his throne, the Emperor radiated power and authority that made the air itself seem heavier. As Sam, Ember, and Ash approached the throne, the conversations in the hall gradually died away until the only sound was their footsteps echoing on the crystal floor. Every eye in the vast space was focused on the small procession making its way toward the Emperor. When they reached the base of the throne, Chancellor Marcus bowed deeply and announced, "Your Imperial Majesty, I present Sam Rivers of the human species, who has protected and cared for their Highnesses Ember and Ash during their time of great need." Emperor Dracon's eyes, each one larger than Sam's head, focused on the human with an intensity that was almost physical. For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing, simply studying the creature who had saved his grandchildren. Sam fought the urge to step backward, reminding himself of Marcus's advice about meeting a grandfather rather than a ruler. Then Ember and Ash broke away from the group and rushed toward the throne, their electrical patterns blazing with joy and excitement. "Grandfather," they projected in unison, using their bioelectric communication to express emotions too complex for words. The change in Emperor Dracon was immediate and dramatic. The intimidating ruler vanished, replaced by a loving grandfather whose face lit up with joy as his grandchildren reached him. He leaned down from his throne and gathered both young dragons into his arms, his own electrical patterns shifting to warm, protective pulses that filled the entire throne room with a feeling of contentment. For several minutes, the Emperor held his grandchildren, his relief and happiness so strong that even the human observers could feel it through the ambient electrical fields. When he finally looked up at Sam again, there were tears in those ancient eyes. "Sam Rivers of humanity," the Emperor said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. "My grandchildren tell me you found them injured and alone, and that you cared for them as if they were your own children. Is this true?" Sam stepped forward, acutely aware that hundreds of powerful beings were hanging on his every word. "Your Majesty, they were hurt and scared when I found them. I could not leave them to die. Any decent person would have done the same thing." A murmur ran through the assembled dragons at this response. Emperor Dracon raised one hand for silence, then stood from his throne to his full imposing height. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Sam Rivers, you speak of decency as if it were commonplace, but our experience across the galaxy tells us otherwise. In 3,000 years of life, I have encountered countless species and civilizations. Most would have seen my grandchildren as specimens to be studied or resources to be exploited. You alone saw them as children to be protected." The Emperor descended from his throne, each step echoing through the silent hall. When he reached Sam, he continued speaking, but now his words were addressed to the entire assembly as much as to the human before him. "For thousands of years, the Draconic Empire has maintained its position through strength and isolation. We have had little contact with younger species, believing them to be too primitive or too aggressive to warrant our attention. Today, one member of such a species has shown us that wisdom and compassion are not limited to age or technological advancement. Emperor Dracon stopped directly in front of Sam, towering over the human, but somehow not threatening. Around the hall, dragons leaned forward to hear what their emperor would say next. Sam Rivers, you have shown my family a kindness that transcends species and politics. You have proven that honor and decency exist among your people. Therefore, I make this declaration before the assembled nobility of the Empire. The Emperor's voice grew stronger, taking on the formal tones of official proclamation. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the human species, represented by the courage and compassion of Sam Rivers, are hereby declared friends and protectors of the Draconic Empire. Any who would harm humanity must first face the wrath of the Crystal Throne. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Sam could hardly believe what he was hearing. In saving 2 lost children, he had somehow secured the protection of the most powerful civilization in known space for all of humanity. But Emperor Dracon was not finished. To the amazement of everyone present, the ancient ruler slowly lowered himself to one knee, bringing his massive head level with Sam's. Sam Rivers, I perform before you the Talon of Honor, a gesture never before given to one not of dragon blood. You are hereby named kin friend of the Eternal Throne, with all the rights and protection such a title confers. The assembled dragons gasped in shock. Several of the court officials stepped forward as if to protest, but a look from their emperor silenced them immediately. Sam felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. He looked down at Ember and Ash, who were projecting encouragement and pride through their electrical patterns. Whatever this title meant, they approved of their grandfather's decision. Your Majesty, Sam said carefully, I am honored by your words, but I do not need titles or rewards. Seeing Ember and Ash safe and happy is reward enough. Emperor Dracon smiled, an expression that transformed his ancient features. And that response, Sam Rivers, is exactly why you deserve every honor we can bestow upon you. You seek no reward for doing what is right, which makes you worthy of the greatest rewards we can offer. As the formal ceremony concluded and the court began to disperse, Sam realized that his life as a simple maintenance worker was over forever. He had become a bridge between 2 civilizations, and the responsibility that came with that role would shape the rest of his days. But when he looked at Ember and Ash, still glowing with happiness at being reunited with their family, he knew that every challenge ahead would be worth it. Sometimes the greatest changes in the galaxy began with the simplest acts of kindness. News of Emperor Dracon's declaration spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours of the ceremony in the Crystal Throne Room, every major civilization had received the formal announcement that humanity was now under the protection of the Draconic Empire. The reaction was immediate and profound. Sam learned about the galaxy's response during his final day on the Dragon homeworld, as he prepared to return to human space with a formal diplomatic delegation. Chancellor Marcus briefed him on the intelligence reports that were flooding in from across known space. The Corvin hegemony has recalled all their battle fleets from human borders, Marcus reported, reading from a crystal tablet that glowed with information. They were apparently planning a major offensive against your outer colonies next year. Those plans have been completely abandoned. Sam sat in his luxurious quarters, still trying to process the magnitude of what his simple act of kindness had set in motion. Ember and Ash were curled up nearby, content to be near their human friend even though they were back among their own people. The young dragons had grown noticeably during their time away from home, and their electrical communication had become more sophisticated, allowing for more complex conversations. What about the pirates and raiders that have been hitting our shipping lanes? Sam asked. Gone, Marcus replied with satisfaction. Every known pirate base in human space has been evacuated. The criminal organizations want no part of a conflict with the Empire. Your trade routes are now among the safest in the galaxy. Through the window of his quarters, Sam could see the busy activity in the capital city below. Dragon citizens went about their daily lives, but he noticed increased military activity as well. Ships were launching from the palace platforms on regular schedules, heading out into space on missions he could only guess at. Are you sending warships to human space? Sam asked with concern. I hope my actions have not forced your people into a military commitment they did not want. Marcus looked up from his reports with an expression of mild amusement. Sam Rivers, you still do not fully understand what has happened here. The Emperor has not committed us to protecting humanity out of obligation. He has done so because your actions proved that your species possesses qualities we have rarely encountered in our long history among the stars. The Chancellor set down his tablet and moved to the window, gazing out at the crystal spires of the city. For 3,000 years, we have watched younger civilizations rise and fall. Most follow predictable patterns of expansion, conflict, and eventual destruction. We have remained isolated because we believed that involvement with such species would only lead to disappointment and loss. Sam joined Marcus at the window, watching as a group of young dragons played in one of the floating gardens that adorned the city. Their carefree joy reminded him of how Ember and Ash had looked when they first began to recover from their injuries. Your rescue of our young ones has shown us that humanity may be different, Marcus continued. You had everything to gain by reporting their presence to your authorities. You could have become famous, wealthy, politically powerful. Instead, you chose to protect two frightened children because it was the right thing to do. Ember approached the two of them, projecting a complex electrical pattern that Sam had learned to recognize as curiosity, mixed with affection. The young dragon had become remarkably skilled at reading human emotions and expressions, often responding to Sam's moods before he was fully aware of them himself. What will happen now? Sam asked. I understand that your protection will keep humanity safe from external threats, but what about the long term? Are our species going to become allies, or will this just be a temporary arrangement? Marcus smiled, an expression that still looked strange on his reptilian features but had become familiar over the past few days. That, my friend, will depend largely on you and people like you. The Emperor has decided that humanity deserves a chance to prove itself worthy of a true alliance. You will be our primary contact point for establishing formal relations between our civilizations. The weight of that responsibility settled on Sam's shoulders like a physical burden. He was not a diplomat or a politician. He was an electrician who had been in the right place at the right time to help two lost children. The idea of representing humanity in negotiations with an ancient, powerful empire was overwhelming. I do not know anything about diplomacy or interstellar politics, Sam protested. Would it not be better to work through official government channels? Perhaps eventually, Marcus agreed. But for now, the Emperor trusts you more than he would trust any government official. You have proven your character in a way that no amount of political posturing could match. Besides, Ember and Ash have made it clear that they consider you family. They would be quite upset if you were not involved in future relations between our peoples. As if summoned by the mention of their names, Ash joined Ember beside the window. Both young dragons began projecting synchronized electrical patterns that Sam recognized as their way of expressing agreement and approval. They wanted him to continue being their connection to the human world. The return journey to human space took place aboard a full diplomatic convoy, with Sam's transport ship escorted by 3 dragon warships. The sight of the convoy dropping out of faster-than-light travel near Earth sent shockwaves through human space that were still reverberating weeks later. Sam's return to Gamma 7 was far different from his departure. The mining station had been transformed into a major diplomatic facility, with representatives from colonial governments and Earth's central authority waiting to debrief him. News reporters filled every available space, all hoping to interview the man who had single-handedly changed humanity's position in the galaxy. But Sam found himself most interested in the small group of station personnel who had remained behind during the crisis. Commander Walsh, Security Chief Rodriguez, and the handful of others who had risked their lives to support him during those critical first hours. Sam, Commander Walsh said as they met in the station's conference room, I owe you an apology. When I learned you had been hiding alien life forms on my station, I was angry about the breach of protocol. I never imagined you were protecting the future rulers of an interstellar empire. Sam shook his head. Commander, you had every right to be angry. I violated regulations and put the entire station at risk. I just could not let those children suffer when I had the power to help them. And that decision has made humanity one of the most protected species in the galaxy, Rodriguez added. Every criminal organization, every hostile government, every potential threat to human space has backed down rather than face the possibility of dragon retaliation. You did not just save 2 alien children, Sam. You saved our entire civilization. The formal diplomatic negotiations that followed were complex and lengthy, But the foundation had already been established by Sam's simple act of compassion. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchange programs were established, and humanity gained access to dragon technology that advanced human civilization by centuries. But perhaps the most significant change was harder to quantify. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity not because of military might or technological advancement, but because of the moral character demonstrated by one individual in a moment of crisis. Other species began reaching out to human space, curious about a civilization that could produce people willing to sacrifice for strangers. Sam eventually returned to his work as an electrician, though his duties had expanded considerably. He split his time between maintaining the systems on Gamma 7 and serving as an unofficial ambassador to the Dragon Empire. Ember and Ash visited regularly, and their continuing friendship served as a symbol of the bond between their peoples. 1 year after the first meeting in the Crystal Throne Room, Sam received a message that brought tears to his eyes. It was from a research station in the Outer Rim, where a human scientist reported finding a small, injured creature from an unknown species. Instead of turning it over to government authorities, the scientist had chosen to care for the being herself, nursing it back to health while trying to locate its people. The message included a simple line that showed how much humanity had learned from Sam's example. "I remembered what you did for Ember and Ash, and I knew this was the right thing to do." As Sam read the message, he realized that the greatest victory was not the protection of human space or the technological advances that had followed. It was the knowledge that humanity had chosen to embrace compassion over fear, kindness over exploitation. In a galaxy full of ancient civilizations and powerful empires, humans had found their niche as the species that could be trusted to do the right thing when no one was watching. The silence that had fallen over the galaxy after Emperor Dracon's declaration was not the silence of fear, but the silence of respect. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple recognition that all intelligent life deserved compassion and protection. And it had all started with a veteran electrician who could not walk away from two frightened children, regardless of what species they belonged to.